My first memory of Nick came shortly after moving to Flower Mound in the summer of 2007. There was a skinny 12-year-old wearing a white shirt and an oversized helmet, riding his mountain bike that was bigger than he was. I subsequently learned that this young man was Nick, who was riding to church on his own early before his family to fulfill responsibilities that he had as a leader among his young men. As recently as several weeks ago, Nick, this time driving a Volkswagen, gave me a ride as we provided some service to an elderly couple from church. I came to see through the years that service, hard work, and dedication to his responsibilities were some of Nick's bedrock traits. One of the traits I especially appreciated about Nick was his ability to encourage others and bring out the best in other people. During his senior year, Nick was extremely busy with school, studies, work, family, scouts, and church. He was getting by on only a few hours of sleep per night. Even though he was extremely busy, he never said no to an opportunity to do service or help others. Nick loved the outdoors. Nick would have ideas on fun activities that we could do on campouts. It was not uncommon to evaluate those ideas by asking Nick, if this doesn't go well, how would the headline on the news sound? For all of his ingenuity and adventure seeking, Nick's sense of reason would prevail. On a week-long high adventure camp in 2010, Nick was one of several boys petting a poisonous snake, begging us adults to let them take it back to the campsite so they could cook it and eat it. On one campout at LBJ Grasslands, Nick brought no supplies with him with the goal of living only off of what he was able to find. I recently went back and found some video of Nick eating a June bug on that campout. In December 2011, I had the pleasure of working with Nick on his Eagle Scout project. In working the project paperwork, Nick exhibited another of his traits. Nick was very self-motivated. He was the one following up with me about meeting and discussing his project. On the day of his project, Nick exhibited another trait. He was able to lead others and help them rally around a worthy cause. Nick found adventure and seized the moment in whatever he was doing. Seeing Nick's picture on the Marcus Marauder newsletter, there were some common words and themes from fellow students in describing Nick. Brilliant, passionate, eager to learn, eager to share and teach, intelligent, kind-hearted. He put a smile on people's faces. He made people laugh. Several friends mentioned that they would have not made it through classes without Nick's help. In my discussions with Nick, I found him to have an innate curiosity and drive to understand principles and how things work. By the questions he asked, it was clear that he understood difficult concepts well beyond his years. Very few times in my life have I met another person of any age as intellectually driven and self-motivated as Nick. Nick took it upon himself to research aircraft kinematics and dynamics, learn the relevant equations of motion, and apply them to his designs. The things Nick taught himself were well beyond normal high school curriculum. In one instance, I got a call from Nick. He wanted my ideas on how to provide oxygen to a mouse in order for it to survive at high altitude yet not be overpressurized at low altitude. He explained his goal of building a rocket to launch a mouse up 10,000 feet and return it to the ground alive. We talked about some options, and trying not to squash his dreams, I explained that waivers from the FAA and closed airspace would be required, as well as permits to buy chemicals to make propellant for a rocket that size. Nick realized that the logistics of such an endeavor were too much for his time frame. I recall one evening last summer when Nick was trying to decide what he wanted to do for a living. He came by the house and we talked for a couple of hours. He explained how he wanted to have an exciting job, working to help people and serve our country, possibly in military special operations, describing many of his ideal job characteristics. After listening for a while, I explained that the job he was describing was in the movies, the job of one superhero, but in real life, the job of hundreds of different people with totally different skill sets. Nick was a little deflated. He resolved that he just needed to become independently wealthy so he could be like Tony Stark, Iron Man. We talked about some of the limitations and benefits of that. I suppose when you're like Nick, you're gifted and capable in so many ways that limiting yourself to just one career is just no fun. Nick, I love you, I miss you, and I look forward to more interesting discussions in the next life.
Nick decided to take his life on August 6, 2013, shortly after he had graduated from high school. There, of course, were several factors that led to Nick's decision to take his life by suicide, but some of the contributing factors and the catalyst, I believe, was a sense of disappointment and rejection that he had experienced. Nicholas was not the type of kid that I think people imagine will choose to take their life. Nicholas wasn't he wasn't bullied, he wasn't picked on, he actually was very popular, he was very smart, he was funny, very well liked, he was an Eagle Scout, he was active in church, he even had a girlfriend. So I think sometimes teenagers have this idea in their mind that it's the kids that are very different, that are emo, that they're the ones that will make the choice to behave in self-harm practices or talk about taking their life, even if it's joking around. And one thing that really seemed to take everyone by surprise in our family and the school and community is that Nicholas wasn't one of those kids. He was just like one of you. The difference perhaps is that Nicholas didn't know how to admit he needed help. And I'm afraid that's becoming more common, that teenagers think they're the only ones that are struggling or need help, and so they're reluctant to reach out to somebody to ask for help. Nicholas was just, he was such a good kid. He was funny. He was really goofy. He used to come through the door after school and say, "Hey, Mama," and then he would go into his room and he'd fall on his bed face down and he'd fall asleep. He'd have his backpack on and he would just fall asleep because at the time he was getting by on just a few hours of sleep. And at the time, I think we thought, "Oh, we're so proud of him. Look at how hard he's working." But that really should have been a signal for us. I hope that those of you watching this video will be willing to ask for help if you need it, to not just for yourself, or if you know of somebody else that seems to be struggling, find somebody that you can talk to, that you can reach out to. I hope, if nothing else, that Nick's death will bring awareness to the struggles and difficulties that you might be facing, and prevent this from happening to someone else.